Hello, this is Mr. Vargas, and this is part 4 of the maze game tutorial. So in the last part, we added a lot of things to our game, but none of it worked. We added keys, we added another level, there's a door there, and but we didn't code any of it. So today's tutorial is to go back and code those things we created in part 3. So this is where we were left, this is where we were at before. Give it a second to load. And so you had a level, you had a character, he could walk across the level. The camera followed the character. But when they walked up, well, one thing you'll notice is the character walked really slow. So, and he doesn't collect the keys because, like I said, we didn't code it yet. So, you know what? Before I start coding today's work, I want to just address the fact that the speed I picked for the character I think was too slow in my earlier tutorial. So I'm gonna go under behaviors, and these numbers right here, -3, it's kind of annoying to test the game and to test multiple levels when you're moving so slow. So I'm just gonna double all of these values, making sure that I don't change the sign. So the negative still needs to stay a negative, but instead of being -3, it's gonna be 6 and -6. So if you test it now, they walk much faster, and that just makes the game easier to test, I think. So I'm gonna hit OK. And so now we're gonna start coding this. Now, a lot of this code can actually go in multiple places. If you remember, every object has its own behaviors page, but because our main character has so much stuff already inside of them, I decided to do all of my code today inside of the other objects. So I'm gonna go to door, and a lot of today's work or a lot of today's code is actually gonna happen inside of door. Right now, door has nothing in it. So if you didn't catch that, I clicked on door and then I hit behaviors. All right, so let's add some code to door. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create something to keep track of the number of keys collected, and that's called a variable, or in FlowLab they call it a global. So we're gonna create a global, and we want to set it to an initial value. Since I have 5 keys, I want to set it to 5. So I'm going to use a once block because a once block runs one time. So right at the beginning of the project, we want to set the number of keys to 5, or the number of keys remaining to 5. Right? Every time we collect a key, that number will go down. So let's set this to 5. So at the beginning of this running, we are going to send 5 to a variable. And this is something, I don't think we've used these yet. They're called globals, and global just means it can be seen by everybody. And the reason that we want this number to be seen by everybody is because you got to remember the keys need to be able to see this variable so that they can change it, right? Because every time a key gets collected, it wants to reduce this number. So we're going to create a new global. So we're going to do add new name, and we're going to call it keys remaining. Press OK, press OK. So at the beginning of this project, 5 gets sent to keys remaining, and we're going to connect it to the set. And we also want the user to be able to see how many keys they have remaining. So we're going to go to labels. That's under GUI for graphical user interface, and we're going to add a new label. And the value of this global is going to be sent to this label. And you can change, well, you can set this to 0 if you want, but it's going to get set to 0, or actually it's going to get set to 5 right when the project starts. So if you want, you can set it to 5. It doesn't really matter because, like I said, once the project starts, this label's value gets set to 5. You might want to put a border around it, makes it easier to see. See how it pops up, becomes a lot more visible over here. All right, and I'm going to press OK. So even though that says 5, when you run your game, look what happens right away. It turns, even though it said 0, right when you run it, it gets set to 5. All right, so let's code. So we've set our variable. Now it's time, remember, we're inside the door right now. So now it's time to code what we want to happen when the door gets hit. So we're going to use a collision block when the door collides with player, right? We don't want to just go to the next level. We want to check to see that the number of keys remaining is 0. So we want to check for two things. We want the player got the door has collided with the player, and the number of keys remaining is equal to 0. So whenever you want to check and, like, two things, you have to go to logic and math, and there's this thing called the logic gate. And the default one is fine, but there are some other ones, and we'll talk about these later on. Some of these are pretty easy to understand. Or means either of these things is true, but we're gonna leave it on the and. So when the door collides with the player and the number of keys remaining is 0. Now to check to see if the number of keys remaining is 0, we use something called the filter, and that's also under logic and math. So we click on filter, and we want to say less than, actually equal to 0. So when the number of keys remaining is equal to 0, let's see, this goes in the in. You might have to move some of this around. Actually, let's move this over here. So when the number of keys remaining is equal to 0 and we've collided with the player, we're going to go to the next level. Now, I had a lot of problems with this. I kept on connecting. This just feels like it should work. Like this pass, you could put it in here, and it feels like it should work, but it wasn't working. And I figured out why. I don't know why this behaves this way, but basically when this is true, when keys remaining is equal to 0, pass activates. But what it sends out is a 0. And that doesn't work because in logic gates, a 0 means false. This is really weird, but basically what you need to do is you need to put a number block and set this number block to 1. And when this is equal to 0, we're going to just connect to the in. And what that's going to do, it's going to send the 1 out of here, and the 1 will connect to B. So when the player collides, that's going to send out a 1. And whenever a key is collected, this sends out a 1 as well. But the only thing you got to think about is that when you get to the door, like, you've already collected all the keys, and this won't fire, this won't activate. So you have to tell this to activate. So the way you do that is by connecting the hit of the collision to the global over here. And what that's going to do is when the player hits the door, this will fire, and then this will fire. And when this fires, it's basically telling FlowLab, hey, I want you to send out the number of keys remaining. The number of keys remaining gets sent to this filter. If it's equal to 0, it sends a 0 out of here, but we don't want a 0, we want a 1. So this activates this 1 block, 1 gets sent out of here, and then if both of these things are 1, then we go to the next room. So it's kind of convoluted. And, we'll do more projects that practice this, but and there's an easier way. This is the way I figured out how to make this work. So finally, we're going to go to GameFlow. We're going to add a next level block, and we just, right out of this logic gate, we just connect to the go, and that should bring us to the next level. If the keys are coded, which they're not yet. All right, so we're done here. I'm going to hit OK. And finally, to make this all work, we need to code our keys. So let's go to Edit for the keys, Behavior, and inside of our key object, we want to do 3 things. We want to destroy, whenever the player hits the key, we want to destroy the key, we want to play a sound, and we want to reduce keys remaining by 1. So let's go add a collision block. Remember, we're inside the key right now. So when the key hits a player, we're going to do 3 things, right? We're going to destroy the key, so that's a destroyer. We're going to play a sound, so that's a sound object, and you can choose sound and pick a sound that you think will work well. It's taking a while to load for me. There we go, effects. Again, you can pick something, maybe a switch or maybe success. I'll just go over here and I'll do a coin sound. And press OK. I don't even know what it sounds like. We'll find out when we play it. All right, so when the key hits the player, the key destroys itself. It also plays a sound. And then finally, we need to reduce the number of keys remaining. So to reduce the number of keys remaining, I found the way I figured out how to do it is by activating a number block and then setting the value to -1. All right, so this will connect to the in. It activates the number block, and then we go and use a global block. The global block allows us to see all of our globals, and look at right here, keys remaining. Even though we created this, oh, and actually misspelled the remaining, but we actually created this inside of the door block, but we can see it from within here. So I'm going to select that, press OK, and then look at what we do, right? The collision activates a -1, and then we're going to add -1 to the number of keys remaining, which of course just reduces it by 1. So let's test our game. Actually, I'll just hit OK, and I'm gonna hit OK, and I'm gonna just test it over here. So look at the number 5 up here. When I collect one of these, so notice it played the sound, and it also went down by 1. Plays the sound and goes down by 1. Plays the sound and goes down by 1. And then finally, this is the last key. You know what? Let's test this though. I'm going to go to the door. Look, it does nothing. But let's go get this last key. And now let's go to the door. And it takes us to the next level. And that's it. That's it for part 4 of the tutorial. We got the keys and the doors working. In the next tutorial, we're going to add a start screen, end screen, music, and some other finishing touches. Thank you.